You're watching Every Day's a Saturday, USCC veteran. Let's go, baby. And here's your host, Bryan. And what's going on, friends and family? Happy New Year to all of you guys, and welcome back to another season. This is going to be season 4. Goodness gracious. And going to be season 2 for Coffee Talk. Usually how I've always done it in the past is I've always added some kind of a segment during each season. Season 3, we brought on Coffee Talk, started off the first 10 episodes solo, trying to wing it on myself, just talking about all the different things that I had experienced through the past couple of seasons, you know, all the stuff with homelessness and addiction and all that stuff. And then I found Marie, and I had her on Every Day's a Saturday, and her story was so compelling to me that I was like, man, she's got to make great stories. So I think she would be a good addition to Coffee Talk. So I brought her on there, and we just kind of had one episode where we talked about her journey a little bit more in depth. And then after that, I was like, I think once that show ended, I was like, hey, why don't you just become part of the Coffee Talk show? And here she is, and we're starting it off together. And I'll tell you what, we're going to be hitting season 4 on the run. She's got us well booked out. You guys don't know this, but we are actually taping right now in November. November 17th, and this is going to air on January 9th. So we have a lot of interviews that we're going to be conducting in the next few weeks, but we hope everybody made it through the holidays, and you guys all are safe, and we appreciate you guys for coming back and listening to us, and we hope that you guys continue to push this show out. I did make a commitment when I first started this. I told myself I would give myself about 5 years of doing it, and then kind of rethink myself of like, where do I go with it? Do I go further? What do I do? So we're getting close to that time where it's starting to look at as, is this something we continue to keep going? As long as we continue to make all of our goals. I last year we hit, I wanted to hit over 200 listeners on the Spotify side. Spotify is extremely hard to get listeners on. So I started off the season, I think, with like 108, and we hit over like 205, I think. And we're still going. So we still got about another month to see where we hit, but we're a little over the goal. So I was happy for that. So we got to set another goal for this upcoming year to hit. And it's all thanks to everybody out there for you guys continuing to support and push the show out and share it with all your friends and family. But Marie, how are we doing today? Are you ready?
I am ready. I'm not doing the best. I got some stuff going on in my personal life, but I am traveling. I'm in North Carolina right now, visiting my best friend and her kids and husband, and hanging out here. And I've got some plans to go see some other people when I leave here, and I'm excited to just kind of experience stuff for a little while. I'm definitely traveling. Traveling does not do well with my body. For the listeners who have never been here before, I was medically discharged out of the Army, and I've got something called hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. It's a genetic condition where my connective tissues are just degrading. And so I suffer with chronic pain. I have to wear braces. I've got knee braces and canes and stuff like that. So traveling is really hard for me. It was really interesting as I was flying out here. I passed by the place in the airport where a couple years ago I had to eat my pride. And I was walking to the gate, and I stopped where I was, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. And I had to humble myself to ask for a wheelchair. And so now when I travel, I have to have a wheelchair because I can't walk that far. And so it's definitely interesting to kind of see how far that I've come, and sometimes I beat myself up for it, but I'm learning radical acceptance. You know, I've overcome a lot of emotional challenges in my life, and this physical one is just another stepping stone to continue being where I am and finding my higher power and finding connection and realizing my worth is not in my body. It's not in other people. It's not in the addictions. It's not in my accomplishments, that my worth comes from God. And, you know, I can make it through hard things. So,
Yeah, and I imagine, you know, had you not been through all the things you've done in your journey of healing, what you're going through would probably put you in a spiral, right? And
yes.
instead, you're finding opportunity in this moment, and looking at the opportunity to continue to grow, right? Instead of take steps backwards,
Yes.
and that's a real tribute to your healing, right?
Well, I have to tell you this, a quick crazy story. God has a funny sense of humor, you know, with everything that I have going on in my past. So, by the time this airs, I'll be close to, if not, or yeah, I'll be close to 9 years sober. So January
Wow.
17th, God willing, I'll have my 9 years. And God has a really funny sense of humor because one of the hotels I stayed at last week, or the hotel that I stayed at last week, when I was cleaning up and packing up, my I had a friend helping me, and he looked under the bed, and there was a full bottle or a full can of Bud Light sitting under my bed the entire time.
That's
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah, and that's what I used to drink. And so in my past, you know, it was a nod from God saying, "Hey, look how far you've come," because in my past I would have already been drunk, you know. But going through these hard things that I didn't think that I'd be able to make it through, God's like, "Yo, like, look what you how far you've come." So it was very much a God moment. So, but
And
yeah, funny sense of humor, dude.
well, yeah, it it does show how far you've come, though, and so continue, keep going down the right path, and keep leaning on other people, that friends, family. Me, I'm always here as well. So
Well, and then I'll say thank you so much, and then I'll say, you know, hopefully by the time this airs, you'll be at your new place. How's the moving going? He's if For those of you who don't know, Brian's moving out to San Diego and kind of starting over himself. So, how's that going?
I wish I would say it's not it's going amazing, but it's going about as stressful as it could go, and then it's fine, because uh I'm a person where I believe in trying to have more than one plan. I always try to have A, B, and a C. That way, if one or two of them falls, I got at least another one to kind of fall back on, and that's just kind of how live my life. But once you become 100% disabled and under the VA, you learn real fast how much they keep you at a level, and you'll never be able to go past it. So I'm learning a lot by being 100% disabled too, and having to navigate that life, going from a six-figure income to a fraction of that, and the way the VA works and anything else, man, there's nothing you can do to better yourself. Like, they just keep you at a level that they want you to be at, and I'm learning that real fast. So I'm learning a little bit of, I think, the unfortunate side, and hopefully we get things worked out. But if not, I am going to kind of talk about some of these things that I'm going through, that I imagine a lot of others, brothers and sisters, are going through, if not even worse. And I'm an advocate of, when I experience something, I want to fight so that others don't have to experience same shit that I had experienced. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, hopefully soon my backdrop will be different, and I'll be settled into a place that I've so desired to live in for the longest time. Like, if I'm here stuck in California, I want to at least live somewhere that I prefer to live, and not where I have to live, right? So super excited about that. But let's go ahead and get this show on the road. We've had our guest waiting back there. Another special shout out before we start this off to our sponsor, Cash Coffee. located in Logan, Utah, and hopefully you guys might be seeing a little bit more of Marie in their shop and in the near future. But we appreciate all the things they've done for us. And before we get going, let's go ahead and brew up some coffee, cash coffee. All right. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get this show on the road. I'm sure Marie's going to kick it off like she normally does for us with one of her amazing poems. And then she's going to go ahead and introduce our next guest. So let's go ahead and get ready to go. The show is, stage is going to be yours.
Yes, sir. So, for those of you who are just joining us, I write poetry about recovery from trauma and addictions, and just something that's been, been our little journey is that I'll read a poem or two, every episode. So, this poem I wrote in August 2025, and it's called "Looking Inside." This journey I'm on is not for the faint. It's up to God if I ever become a saint. Sometimes I feel like I'm going insane. There are so many parts of this thing called a brain. One side seems broken, the other's intact. Other days it feels the opposite, in fact. On one day I want to scream, cry, and shout. On another, there's faith, love, and trust all about. Thoughts in my head go round and round, sometimes smoothing the edges to a beautiful sound. Other times, the thoughts are too sharp to take it, so I push them away or decide to fake it. Or words come out that I later regret, unless, of course, my brain decides to forget. They said it'd be hard, the looking inside, figuring out just how to myself I had lied. Because of those stories I had projected, other people were hurt or their lives were affected. Why would I want to dig deep inside? Why should I address my ego and pride? They were at fault, the ones that I hurt. Someone hurt me, I can throw others in dirt. That is the way my brain starts to think. Then any love I was feeling begins to sink. When the panic sets in and I start to freak out, my brain starts filling with anxiety and doubt. I get fearful and angry at the same time, stuck in a box just like a mime. The walls start to tighten. My breath is restricted until I recognize that, whoa, I am so sorry. The walls start to tighten. My breath is restrained until I recognize the hope that's remained. This life is much better than the one I was in. This simple thought tends to leave me a grin. My mind starts to clear. I get a new start. To get the chains off, I must look at my part. It doesn't matter what others have done. This isn't a war that has to be won. There are scars from my past that won't go away, some sores I keep picking at every day. Then I poison others or hurt myself more because I'm afraid of closing the door. I don't know who I am without all the pain, or if dignity I can once again attain. Fear is the factor that governs it all, the whirlwind inside the negativity call. I listen more often than I would prefer, yet no matter how loud, I cannot deter. I choose to push through for the others that follow. I want to keep faith for a brighter tomorrow. If I can't take steps forward today, I take someone's hand who's going my way. They help to make sure I don't fall down that path of isolation or pity, scorn, or wrath. I need others to help me recognize my worth. It's the only way to achieve a new birth. A life of peace and freedom of mind protected by the Creator, loving and kind. Not bound by the chains that I have been under. I deserve better than all of this blunder. So, when my brain starts making me crazy, I just have to remember my faith has been lazy. I can keep going no matter what follows, for I have help all around me through all my tomorrows. Thank you.
Outstanding. And guys, don't forget to go over to sliderbabe.com. Go check it out over there. She has, that's her website, and you will be able to access her poetry. You'll be able to access to get her book that she has out there. And as well as, I believe you have the link to our shows as well, right? So,
And a scheduling link. So if you
oh,
are a veteran or an advocate or a family member, come on and talk to us about your journey or your loved one's journey and tell us a little bit more about the PTSD to advocacy, because that's what we're focusing on right now.
outstanding. All right, let's go ahead and introduce our next guest. I'm super excited for our next guest.
Okay, so our next
Highest
guest,
ranking
go ahead.
enlisted member
Yep,
that you've ever had on the show.
highest enlisted. So his name is Rob. I think it's Whiteley or Whiteley. Yep. Okay, I'm right. Rob Whiteley. And I actually met Rob. So there is something called the Veteran BBRC, Veteran Business Resource Center. And they have a veteran networking, entrepreneur networking event that they host every month. And I met Rob there, and it's so exciting because he's got this new 505 or
501c.
new nonprofit. Yes, thank you. So he's got this new nonprofit that he's working on, and so he has served 28 years in the Army from 93 to 2021. He retired as the Operations Sergeant Major for Cadet Command and Fort Knox. While in the Army, he was an 11 Bravo and later an 11 Zulu. Multiple deployments to Iraq, Afghanistan, and other countries in the Middle East, Western Pacific, and more. And his nonprofit, I will let him talk about it a little bit later in this, but it is brand spanking new. When I talked to him, he was still waiting for funding and all of that stuff, and it's doing a lot of outdoors activities for veterans. So without further ado, we have Rob. Thanks, Rob.
Man, Rob, wow. What a freaking intro, and what an honor to have you on the show. Thank you so much for being here, man.
Oh, it's an honor for sure, and thank you both, Bryan and Marie. I really like the poem as well.
Thank
Really,
you.
really hit home. So yeah, great.
Thank you.
Happy to be here though. Fire away.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about who you are. I know you're going to talk about it later, but
Mhm.
what is the name of your nonprofit? And yeah.
Sure. Rob Whiteley, originally from Camden, Maine. Um, Always wanted to join the military. I grew up on Hogan's Heroes and MASH and Sands of Iwo Jima and all those things. Gomer Pyle USMC. Really wanted to join the military from the time I was like 6 years old. So I really just focused on nothing but wanting to go to the military. I joined the Army directly out of high school. Went in initially my first 2 years as a 13 series, which is artillery, and then quickly transitioned over to infantry, where I spent the remainder of 26 plus years. Um,
Before you
Served. Mhm,
before you joined the military,
mhm.
do you feel like you joined the military because you were trying to escape life or because you were moving forward into something? I'm just curious what your thoughts are. And then
Huh.
Bryan had a question too.
No, great question, Marie. No, not to escape. I actually had a pretty awesome childhood. Can't really say much negative about it. I just always had
Yeah,
that
no, nice
sense.
set on it.
Yeah, I always had, a goal to be the best I possibly could, and that drove me in the Army to, go to all these really cool Ranger School and Jump Master School and Paddling, all that stuff, and just being the most high speed units I could be in, and do the most exciting things I could. So that was just kind of, that's just kind of built into me. I just wanted to do everything I possibly could to serve, and I figure if I'm serving, I'm going to do be the best I possibly can. So
Now,
yeah.
before you
Mhm.
joined though, did you ever see yourself being a sergeant major? I mean, did you
No.
see yourself doing 28 years of it? I mean, it did sound like you always had your sight on it. So it doesn't really surprise me that you made a career out of it. But did you go in with that thought of like, I'm gonna make a career out of this? Or did that just kind of evolve along the way as you were serving?
It's funny. Before I joined, my goal was to do 20 years, and then I wanted to go be a history professor or something when I got done. Um, and then I joined. My first 2 years in the artillery, I wasn't super happy with where I was and what I was doing, so I reclassified, went into infantry, and it's funny because every single reenlistment that I did, I'm like, this is my last one. This is my last one. Even though my original childhood goal was, hey, I want to make this a career, but every time I reenlisted, it was like, this is the last one.
The thought crossed your head, huh?
Yeah, I'm like, I'm getting out. I'm done. And then the Army has what's called an indefinite reenlistment. If you're a Sergeant First Class E7 in more than 10 years, basically that's the trigger to go in def, which will
Mm.
take you out to 20. And so I went in def in 2004, 2004, 2004. And yeah, I was gonna retire right around 20, and then got selected for sergeant major. And that's from the time you get selected to the time you go to school, a year in school, and then you have a 3-year commitment following. That pushed me out past 26. I was selected for sergeant major right around, I believe, 18, 19 years. And then I did a couple more because I didn't, by that point, um, I won't say things get easier. Things actually get a lot more stressful, but it's a different kind of stress than when you're,
Sure.
a private, a specialist, even a sergeant, staff sergeant. But at the end of the day,
Driving over the weekend or something, you got to deal
yeah,
with.
but I
Yeah.
still enjoyed what I was doing. And they always say, you'll hit a point when you just get to it, it's time to go. I can't really put my finger on any specific event that said, "Oh yeah, I'm done, I'm out." But I was at 28 and change, and in the Army at E9, if you aren't over a 2-star level, then you're timed out at 30 years. And so I just decided, okay, yeah, 28 and change is good enough, and that was my point for
So you
retirement.
got out in 2021, you said?
I did.
So you served during the COVID time.
Yes, I did. I
Now,
was
now that had to be an interesting time.
It
You
was.
at this point in time, that's towards the end of your career. You've seen so much
Hmm.
ups and downs, changing of policies, this and that and the other. Then you have to go through COVID. I mean, and that I imagine the way things were, kind of you guys had to change the way you guys were moving forward with the mission, right?
We did.
Did that influence your decision to get out because of the changes and a lot of and I don't want to get too political, but all
Hmm.
of the political atmosphere that was going on at that time to like as we can see, it's gone out of hand now. But do you feel like the politics and what was going on, did that influence you wanting to come out?
Politically, no.
Okay.
I would say it just presented a lot of really significant challenges. So my last, excuse me,
Because you're a sergeant major at this point, man, and you're a
yeah.
decision maker, and you're having to deal with making decisions. I imagine for your command and all that stuff, right? I mean,
It was huge. It severely affected at the time. My final assignment, I was with Cadet Command, so ROTC. We were responsible for at the time 274 colleges nationwide,
oh,
and every year, the rising seniors, so the kids who graduated or finished their junior year, um, they finish their junior year, and then they come to Fort Knox, Kentucky, where I was, for 6 weeks of training. And we brought in annually close to 11,000 cadets tiered out between May and August, and they came in different regiments. So every 5 days, we'd have another 600 individuals coming in and trying to conduct that training, bringing kids from all over the United States during COVID with the isolation protocols and so forth,
That's
and be
gonna
able
burn
to,
anyone out.
yeah, and be able to provide. And then the support structure was another 15,000 or so active duty and reserve and National Guard from around the United States coming in to support those cadets,
Wow.
either as trainers or logistically and so forth. It was a huge challenge.
It was a
And
huge impact on the military, and you know, and as we all know, the budget and everything like that. Now you guys are probably having to do a lot more with less as well, right? Because
yep, we
you
did.
guys are doing things that you guys are doing more than what you normally did on the surface level, right?
Mhm. And so for 2020, it's called Cadet Summer Training. That was canceled for 2020. And then the following year, as I was getting ready to retire, we were still under all of the COVID protocols. And particularly in Kentucky, Kentucky was very stringent with requirements for social distancing, and
Wearing
it was,
masks and all that
yeah,
stuff.
oh
Yeah.
yeah. And so we were still very much impacted by all of those protocols, um, of bringing cadets in and doing isolation, and then from the other standpoint as well, outside of cadet command was my um, post operations role, in that you had a lot of different units at Fort Knox, and from 2020 on we had people PCSing in, and we had to run quarantines and so forth. So it was definitely a challenge. It was a huge impact on us. We had to stand up the emergency operations center for several months. It was a challenge. Then we had um, to oversee all of the vaccination. We basically had to figure out, and I'm not a medical guy. I will never claim to be any kind of medical expert, but we very quickly, myself and the operations director, a colonel, we had to figure out, how do you run a vaccination clinic? How do you do this? We had to find a warehouse. We had to figure out how we were going to bring people onto post because Fort Knox was closed. How are we going to receive civilians, active duty, National Guard, etc., bring them in, keep them socially distanced, run these vaccination clinics, and so forth. So it was definitely a challenge.
So that's it's probably a good point to bring this up, but your 28 years, I imagine you ran through a lot of different exercises in your career, and most
I
of them are
did.
all, manual given, like, yeah, this is how you do it, right? No one in my experience has ever dealt with something to this degree. So this exercise was something you guys have never experienced at the
No.
leadership level of what do we do, pushing it down. You guys, for one, you guys got to make logical decisions, but you also got to protect
Mhm.
your soldiers as well. So I imagine that had to be a lot on your mental, man, and a lot of pressure that like I said, that we've never experienced as a nation. This was nationwide. So I don't think it's something that we all had to go through at one time. So man,
Yeah,
kudos, bro.
it was definitely a challenge, but I will say there was a little bit of humor involved too, because
Yeah.
one of the things that I had to do is I had to read every serious incident report that was generated by all of our colleges and so forth. And I think one of the
Why they're all
funniest,
locked up? Why they're all
yeah,
locked up? Or what?
yeah,
Going crazy in there?
and anytime someone reported, a COVID initially early on, that was a huge thing, and that was, reported up. And I remember reading a college kid's SIR, and they were like, they didn't know they had COVID until they were hanging out in the dorm, and someone farted, and they couldn't smell the fart, and they're like, "Oh, I need to go get tested," because everyone else was freaking out except this one person who couldn't smell it, and they went and got tested, and they came out COVID positive. And military report writing is never very
Oh, I'm
granular
sorry.
like
That's
that, but they
hilarious.
held no, they were like, "Yeah, I couldn't smell a fart, so I went and got tested and had COVID." So I thought that was pretty funny.
No, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
So I have a question kind of going back and
Hmm.
then forward into this. Okay. So as somebody who has been in for 28 years, you have been through, and follow my logic here. Okay.
Hmm.
You've been through multiple deployments. Okay. You continued to re-enlist. You continued to show up and move forward. And obviously, being deployed, you dealt with trauma. Okay. And you
Quite a
continue
bit.
moving forward. There's some sort of internalized something that kept you going through the trauma and through everything else to continue showing up. Okay.
Hmm.
And then to be able to get to a point where you can handle this worldwide phenomenon that has no paperwork on it, and you're creating this whole thing. So there's some sort of something that is internalized. And what I am wondering, because there's a lot of people like me, right, who PTSD galore, and my body fell apart, and when they gave me the option for the medical discharge, I took it because I was emotionally damaged, I was physically damaged, and I took it. I didn't have that motivation to try to continue pushing through, especially when they said that experimental surgery. But
Hmm.
there was a different timeline where I could have stayed in, but my mental stuff was like, no, I'm done. And so, and I've seen a lot of people who, when they get that option to reenlist or whatnot, their mental health takes over and they're like, nope, I'm out of here. Or their physical is like, nope, I'm out of here. I don't want to keep pushing. So I guess my question is, what was it inside of you that was that deciding factor to keep going? And or what tools and resources were you utilizing to help you keep going? Because the thing that we've talked about, resilience is not the idea of just pushing through and keeping
Hmm.
going on your own. It's that ability to reach out for help. So I know in what you've been through, there's no way you could have done it on your own. So what tools or resources or internal drive did you have to help you to get to the point where you're like, yeah, I'm in here for 28. There's just no questions about it, you know? So, well, I mean, you had questions, but you kept going, is what I'm saying.
Hmm.
So, a long winded question to what tools and resources helped you to keep that motivation, to keep going, being traumatized with deployments and everything else?
That's an amazing question, actually. I think first and foremost, I was somewhat blessed with the ability to compartmentalize. And the other piece of that, I got Hill Air Force base fighters flying over. I don't
Did
know
your
if you,
parents stay together while you were a kid, or they
they
were
did.
married the whole time? So you had both parents in the home the
I
entire time? Okay. All right.
I did. And then actually, I have a younger sister. She's a year behind me. My parents actually divorced once we both graduated high school and moved out.
That's a bummer.
Um, but I was always able to compartmentalize pretty well. You know, having grown up, wanting to be in the military, and that's all I wanted to do. I think that it was just kind of like an expectation that you're going to be exposed to some potentially really bad things. And then the other piece of it, though, is huge. By the time 9/11 happened, I was actually on drill sergeant duty when 9/11 when the towers came down, and then I came off drill sergeant duty and started going into deployments. So by that point, I was already a senior staff sergeant, and then so E6, and then a sergeant first class, and the entirety of my senior enlisted time as a sergeant first class and as a E8 first sergeant, I was in leadership positions. And as a leader, I truly believe in setting the example and doing the best you can for your people. And you know, initially I was with a really small, pretty specialized, group, and we were very tight. I had 14 guys at the time, but then later. when I progressed up in rank, and I got to one point where, as a headquarters first sergeant, I had close to 400 people. And they expect me to show up to work. They expect me to, support them. To whether it's as simple as processing their administrative stuff, or whether it's going out in Afghanistan. My last year was with a reconnaissance troop. We were in a pretty kinetic area. We knew we were going to be getting hit all the time. I went out any mission that I thought we were going to be in contact. I was out there with them, and I did that to support my guys. And
You led from the
later,
front.
Yeah, leading by
absolutely, yeah,
example.
because your people don't want someone who's hiding out in an office on the fob. They don't want that. They want someone who's out there with them. And I absolutely believe my place was there with them. And it kind of exposed me. I had my last deployment, particularly, I had three platoons, and they would rotate through daily patrols and such. And so they would do a couple days out at a time. But I was constantly out, and my crew as well. We were mostly vehicle based at that point. Not always, but we had a lot of time in our trucks, and I was out with my crew the entire time. And it kind of took a toll on my crew as well. They were definitely exposed to more. And some of those guys had some challenges later on, after deployment. I did. um, I actually, I was dying my last deployment. Particularly, I was diagnosed with PTSD. We had a pretty significant event. Our troop commander was killed while we were in the process. He was ahead, and I was bringing the troop into Afghanistan, and he was killed while we were in the process of departing Manas, which is a town, an air base in Kyrgyzstan, or was. I think they closed it down now, but we were departing Manas and flying into Afghanistan, and he was killed.
You
And then
want
I
to say
had
his name?
yeah, his name was Captain Ellery Wallace.
Thank you.
And
Rest
he
in
was
peace.
killed. He was absolutely, he was solid guy, one of the greatest human beings I've ever worked with. Man of faith, 4 kids. It was tough. And he was killed on as we were in processing into Afghanistan. And then we had another event where we lost 6 guys all at once, in a green on blue, pretty, which is where, an Afghan, supposed partner decides that he doesn't want to be your friend, and he starts shooting. So we lost 6 guys in an event. It's pretty traumatizing. I think it really affected my troop as a whole. With the troop commander having been killed, 2 months prior, and then we lost another 6. It was just one of those things where, I had to be there for my guys, and at the time we were all male. I had to be there for my guys and not let something, that horrible. And when you have we had, I think, 75 guys, and we had, by that point, 2 months into our rotation, we lost 7. That's 10% of your troop that you deploy with, and that was definitely a challenge. And being there for them and leading from the front, setting the example, it took a toll. Absolutely. Came back, got diagnosed with PTSD, had to deal with that.
So
I have a question when
I'm
you're
gonna
done.
take this. Yeah, I'm gonna take this opportunity because it's not often do we have the opportunity to be in front of a leader like a sergeant major or someone who's had that. I don't think a lot of people understand how much you've seen, right? Like, you see it all. You just, you see reports as they come, incident reports. If something happens on the battlefield, these are all things that are constantly being in front of your face. And,
Mhm.
and a lot of leaders see it really bad, horrible things, hear bad things, but they still have to move forward and continue to lead.
Absolutely.
And what, I think you've
Unquestionably.
kind of touched a little bit, like kind of answered this question really in what you just said. But in as a leader, what pushes you through and says, you want to keep going, and you want to keep pushing through it. And because I imagine, man, there's times it gets hard when you just like you just said, losing someone who is a man of faith, has 4 kids at home. The mission still goes on, right? And you still gotta go make decisions. This is what our war fighters face.
Mhm.
We don't get to choose at it when we're on that side over there, right? You got to keep pushing forward. Here at the home side, a lot of people can tap out whenever they want, quit. Military, we don't have that option.
No, absolutely not.
And as a leader, you got to keep moving forward, right? And like you said, you're very much a leader that leads from the front and not from the rear. And I mean that makes a difference between a lot of guys that serve too. I imagine that meant a lot to them, for these guys seeing, and then for them to say some shit like, "Oh, my knee hurts," and Sergeant Major's over here like, "Yeah, my back, my ankle, my leg, but we're moving." You know what I mean? So what motivates you and kept you pushing through and keeping your level head, and do you guys seek counseling or any kind of things while you're in? Or is there anything available for you guys to get help, or is it more like learn how to basically compartmentalize it and move forward?
And to add on to that, as you're answering, what resources, this kind of goes in with what we've been talking about, like what kept you going as a leader, but also how did you overcome? Because I know that it's there. As a medic, I had it, and leaders have it, and just soldiers and military personnel had it. How did you overcome the survivor's guilt going on to this as well? Because that is a natural part of being deployed, and especially as a leader. So
as far as resources, I think my troop on my last deployment, we were relatively fortunate. We were in Jalalabad. And then a few months into it, we moved to a little bit further remote part of Nangarhar province. We were kind of down right on the border. I'm sure a lot of people remember hearing about Tora Bora immediately post 9/11. So we were actually responsible for the Tora Bora area, and this was 2010, 2011. So essentially 10 years after 9/11, and we were some of the first Americans to go back in there. So towards the end of it, we were somewhat remote. As far as resources, I don't think at the time the military or army at least had 2010, they were starting to get awareness, starting to realize. I did see over the course of GWAT, from 2003, 4 onward, there was more and more emphasis on dealing with these kind of things. There was a lot of talk early on, like 2002, 2003, about all the SF dudes at Bragg that were killing their wives or killing themselves, and that kind of brought a lot of attention to it. And I think the army at least did a pretty good job of trying to get after that. We, of course, we always had our battalion or squadron resource in the chaplain. Our chaplain was pretty engaged. And you don't necessarily have to be a Christian or any person of faith to use that chaplain. Chaplain was relatively engaged. He would get out to some of the more remote areas. And but when you're out, some of my previous deployments, I've been out to the Korengal Valley, some of the where they had if you remember the movie Restrepo, I actually got a chance to go out to Restrepo and Vegas and some of those other really small areas in a really hostile environment, and they really didn't have a whole lot of resource out there. It was definitely challenging. So your experience will vary depending on where you are and what type of environment you're in. So some didn't have a whole lot of access to much at all. The chaplain or some of the company or battalion leadership may come out and talk, and things like that. But I think for the most part, our chaplain was relatively engaged. Anytime we had IED strikes, there was a requirement towards the end, 2010, 2011, that they had to, go into observation at a cache, a combat surgical hospital, and they'd have to be observed, for a week or 2 weeks or something like that. That people were wearing in the back of their helmets, they were wearing like a impact meter that would tell, if you were exposed to a blast, what level of blast you were exposed to. And that was, kind of a trigger to send people to, observation and such. So there was definitely some focus. And then I think over time, it became greater and greater. The Army, part of the Sergeant Major Academy, it's a 10 month course, pretty academic, but one of the requirements was you attend a Master Resiliency course, a
Awesome.
2 week. Everyone who graduated from at least my class on, I was class 66. Everyone who went to the class had to attend a 2 week Master Resiliency course, which I think really helps out, gives people a look at, kind of the psychological aspect. So there's absolutely improvement. Are we there yet? No, but it's night and day difference from, post 9/11 or pre 9/11. In the 90s, it was like, oh, you saw some stuff, you saw some shit. All right, drink some water, take a Motrin, and drive on, and that was it.
Dry
uh
socks.
Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, and then you could if you wanted, you could, I was always clear with my guys, and like I said, at the time I only had guys, while on deployments. I always told them, like, hey, no one's perfect. If you have, if you're having problems, you can always come talk to me. I mean, I've seen plenty of horrible things, and I have no problem talking to a subordinate, a private, and just being like, hey man, we're all going through some pretty crappy things, and I'm a
So
resource too. A leader should be a resource.
you
uh
were leading by example, like, hey, I'll talk to you about my stuff. Come talk to me about yours.
yeah, and
That's
and
Yeah,
awesome.
there's no, that stigma, I think, was starting to go away, the further into the war we got. And I had no problem, I was very open, and wouldn't, and they all, particularly my last deployment, they're all a bunch of cavalry soldiers, and they see this ranger cab guy coming out, and he's like, and I was a bit of a character as a first sergeant. I'm sure there's probably still a lot of stories that are floating around about the craziness that was me, but I
oh, I'm
was
sure, man.
also, yeah, um
We all
yeah,
talk about the leadership. I tell you, especially with first sergeants and gunnies, and woo, yeah.
for sure. Yeah, like I'm sure they'll still tell stories about me. Our fob got hit one night, and I ran out in flip flops, ranger panties, and a 9 mil.
Awesome.
And bullets are flying around, and I'm out in ranger panties and flip flops and a 9 mil, trying to get
Uh,
accountability to people and yelling and screaming. Yeah, it was a good time, but
For those of
uh,
you who don't know, ranger panties are really short, short, short shorts.
they are.
uh,
Yeah, so ranger panties are kind of like Marine Corps PT shorts. They're, you know,
the
very,
silkies. Yeah.
yes, very short. And so yeah, but the leadership is an engaged leader, someone who's a servant leader. Um, I saw a lot of really good senior enlisted, a lot of good officers, who were approachable, and they would, sit down with their guys, especially or gals, in a combat environment, and be able to relate to them and say, yeah, we're going through it too. It's not just you. You're not an outlier. And I think that probably had a significant impact on people as well. One of my platoons already, that day where we had 6 guys killed. It was in a really horrible location, really high up on a mountain.
Mm.
We couldn't have evac'd them, or we couldn't have walked them off this hill. without severely disrespecting our guys. And so we called for medevac. I waited with my group, my platoon, pulling security, and my commander, my new commander. He'd only been in position 2 months. We waited for 8 hours, and finally, Air Force PJs said, you know what? Army Aviation saying we can't land on that mountaintop. Air Force PJs said, yeah, we'll take it, and they got our guys out once it got dark. And yeah, so
Wow.
one of my platoon stars came up to me. He's like, First Sergeant, you're the hardest motherfucker I know. Pardon the language, but
No,
he's
you're
like,
good.
I don't know how you're doing it. I'm like, I'm doing it for you guys. Like, we just lost our command, half of our command team in the Army. You have a commander and a first sergeant. You have a platoon leader and a platoon sergeant. Later on, you have a battalion commander, a sergeant major. So you always have that an officer and enlisted pair. And our commander, 2 months, immediately upon deployment, was killed, and we had a brand new commander. So these guys in the troop leadership, they had me and the new commander, and he was an absolutely great guy as well. But he was new, and
Yeah.
I'd had a year and a half or so with the troop prior to deployment, so I just owed it to them. If I would have checked out and been like, "Yeah, I gotta go," could I have? Yeah, I could have said, "Yeah, I'm not." Gone up to the leadership and said, "Yeah, you got to take me out of position. I just can't deal with it." But no, the guy, my people trusted me, and I just was there for them. And sometimes at the top, it's way harder because you don't necessarily have people to talk to. There's a big thing about, oh, well, you can't talk. You aren't supposed to complain down. He was even in Saving Private Ryan. Complaints go up. So and then there's the whole fraternization thing. So you really aren't supposed to, have relationships with your subordinates and things. But just letting your people know that you're a human and that you're going through the same thing can go a really long way.
So
So
28 years, dude, long time.
Yeah.
Now, I would say half of your first part of your enlistment was peacetime, and
Mhm.
then you damn near spent the last half of your uh, enlistment was all wartime, right? So,
Mhm.
what was the significant difference between serving during the peacetime and then when you went off into the wartime? And then, obviously things had to change, and you guys hadn't dealt um, with you. I guess Desert Storm. There, you might still had some guys from Desert Storm
A few.
left over, right? But now you guys are having to deal with all these guys who've gone to combat. Now they're back and they're trying to come home and they're trying to serve. And did you start seeing guys getting into more trouble, guys and gals getting into more trouble? Uh, did the incidents start arising more and more when they came back off of deployments and things of that nature?
Um,
Absolutely.
really quick before you answer that question, just
Mhm.
to finish off this little segment that we just did. So, the original question was, what are some tools and resources or
Mhm.
some stuff that you had internally to help you keep going and pushing through and being a good leader and just having that motivation to go on. So I just wanted to put it all together and correct me if I'm wrong. So you've got compartmentalizing when it's important. You've
Mhm.
got being an engaged leader, leading by example, being present and understanding with your soldiers, being open with them, and then utilizing the resources of spiritual resources with the chaplain and communicating with them, and then also that master resiliency course. So it's being open, doing what you got to do when you got to do it, but then also reaching out for help. So
Yeah.
is that your overarching?
Yeah, for the most part. They also did, returning from deployment, they did reintegration process where you'd be interviewed by psychologists. I
Mm.
was interviewed. They give you a checklist to fill out, and they're like, "Oh, you qualify for PTSD. We're going to start setting you up with people to talk to," and started going to,
So that's like a new development then.
yeah, I believe so. I hadn't seen anything
Okay.
until I returned from Afghanistan, my second trip to Afghanistan in 2011, towards the end of 2011, and that was part of the reintegration checklist. Is you had to go. to mental health. Everybody did, as part of the unit rotation, you'd go from place to place to place to place. And one of those things was going to, I don't know if it was a doctor initially. I think it was like a social worker. You fill out some paperwork, and then they'll review the paperwork. And if you meet certain triggers, they'll come talk to you, and they'll set you up with appointments. And I did. I went to, I don't know, probably 6 or 7 meetings with a counselor to kind of talk, and
So this
yeah.
this goes along with Brian's question then too,
Mhm.
because he was talking about, during the peacetime and then now after the wartime and how are people handling it. So you had that experience where this was not as available before and now you have it now. So yeah, just
Very
if you
much.
could incorporate the answer to Brian's as well with all of that.
Sure. Yeah, pre 9/11, like in the 90s, your big thing was a rotation to the National Training Center for a month, or a rotation to
That's in
jungle school.
California.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a hardship going to Barstow, California for sure.
Oh, it's
Um,
miserable in the
it
desert
is,
and
yes.
horrid.
40,
Yep.
40 miles in the middle of nowhere at Fort Irwin, California, outside of
Yeah, it's the
Barstow.
Yep.
least funnest place in California.
It is,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Or you'd do a month-long trip down to Fort Sherman, go to the jungle school in Panama or something like that. That was like your big events. And so, I think back then, because there wasn't, anything, I came in 93, so Mogadishu had just happened. It happened while I was, in basic training. Um, and so there really wasn't a whole lot. We had a couple, Desert Storm vets. I remember seeing a couple dudes with CIBs, combat infantry badges running around. We'd had a couple guys from Somalia. But for the most part, the major, and then your Panama. There were some Panama guys, some Grenada Raiders. You very by 93, that was
Some
pretty
old salty
rare
dogs in there, huh?
to
Shit.
see the Ranger Regiment guys who jumped into Grenada in '83. They were few and far between by
Chewing
'93.
on coffee beans and shit.
Yeah, putting Tabasco in their eyes. Yeah.
Yeah.
um, but
Yeah.
it was everything was based around your one big training rotation that you do each year, or every 2 years or whatever it was. I did one peacekeeping rotation to the Sinai Peninsula in the late 90s, right on the border, right in between Egypt and Israel, and so uh, it was a peacekeeping rotation. There wasn't any active combat or anything like that. But coming home, there weren't any significant resources or anything. I mean, there was still, even on a peacekeeping deployment, there was a lot of people who had some problems. You get those guys who they deploy and they come home and their wife's left them, or whatever. So you would still have people coming back and facing challenges, but there was no mechanism in place to for supporting any of that, pre 9/11. Post 9/11, as each deployment I did and came back, it was getting better and better and more structured, more focused on dealing with particularly the mental trauma, and then physical trauma too. So there was definitely a huge focus um, that increased as we went in the decade plus that we were doing large scale deployments back and forth to Afghanistan. I hope that answers your question.
Completely. The next question that I kind of have, I know we kind of have gone really in detail with the military stuff for a while, which is
Mhm.
wonderful.
Because we get
But
intrigued with this stuff, I tell
yes,
you.
yeah. But this is all the stuff that's important to talk about. It's not just talking about, hey, here's all the death and gloom but
Yeah,
here
we have
is
a
the
leader here.
resources available.
Yeah,
Yes.
great
And
opportunity.
so, yeah, and so the next question that I want to do, just to kind of incorporate into the next section, is when you talked about your compartmentalizing. I am curious. It sounds like you utilized a lot of tools to help, but I'm curious if that compartmentalization was due to your detriment when you were transitioning into civilian life, or if it was a benefit. Because some people, when they compartmentalize and then they never face anything. they put it to the side and then they don't face it. And so then when their life changes, they lose their crap because they never faced this stuff. And so I guess my question with that compartmentalizing, were you able to unbox it in a healthy way when you integrated back into civilian life, or was it hard? And kind of go into what was your reintegration when you got out? What was your journey? Did you land softly? Did you land, like skidding and crying and tumbling into a hole? What was your integration like back into civilian life?
So I really don't consider my true reintegration beginning until the early this year. And
Okay.
and the reason
Yeah,
I
you're still
say
pretty
that,
fresh.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
right. Yeah.
yeah, I retired in 21. My actual, I had a bunch of leave saved up, so I was on terminal leave for about 3 months. But
Yeah.
um, the my transition, I signed out on leave in July, mid-July 21. And I was pretty focused on finding something to do immediately upon retirement.
Mhm.
Um, from a financial standpoint, a mental well-being standpoint, a lot of different considerations. But I'd been looking essentially for a job for close to a year before getting out. And I went directly I got out in mid-July, and by the end of July, I was in training. I joined a uniformed federal law enforcement organization. And so there was a lot of, when I joined that organization, there was a lot of focus on, what is federal service doing for you. And I think it made my transition really easy initially, because the transition from being in the military into federal law enforcement was pretty similar. I mean, it was, you had a
Pretty
sense of
parallel
family.
lines. Yeah.
Yeah, very similar. And so, you're surrounded by a good bunch of people for the most part. And then it was kind of regimented, and there were you know lots of opportunities to do pretty cool things. Um and then uh and then I left federal law enforcement in February of this year, and that's, I think, when my transition really started. And then I'm like, oh, I have to like do resumes and job searches and applications, and like, how is this gonna work out? And
Was it hard
yeah,
translating your sergeant major and then trying to get a job? I mean, you go from this like in the military, you're the highest of on the enlisted side. Now you're going into the civilian sector, and sometimes I feel like they don't even give a shit what rank you were in the military. Sometimes they want you to start at the very bottom, and I
yeah,
imagine that's
absolutely, they
got to
do.
be kind of like a little bit of a it's got to be a hard pill to swallow a little bit, right? Because here you are, you in your mind, all this stuff you've done, you know what I mean? And now you're trying to get into the civilian world, and they're just treating you as though you're like one of these kids getting out of college or something, and you've had a long years of experience.
No, absolutely. And then that it's definitely been a challenge. I'm still kind of challenged in that, for the exact reasons that you just mentioned. And I can eat humble pie. Like
Right.
when I got out of the military as a E9, I was running operations for 274 colleges and Fort Knox.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was a dual purpose role. We were the senior mission commander on Fort Knox and for all these colleges, um, to becoming a lowest of the low, or the lowest rank in a federal organization. I was straight out of the academy
Yeah.
as an officer. I was promoted to sergeant lieutenant, but
Were you kind of one of
I,
the older guys going through at this time too,
no,
or I mean, was everybody around your age at this
it
time, or
was
how
a
were you?
It was a mixed bag, actually. In my and we were still during my academy, we were still impacted by COVID. So there was a lot
Oh,
of remote.
yeah, because this was still
Yeah.
2021,
Yep, it
Yeah.
right?
was. So,
Okay.
and the federal government was really big about COVID protocols and things. And like we were in the academy, we were testing every week, taking COVID tests, and so
This is
yeah,
this
it
is this
was.
is a really silly question, but I'm assuming that you're learning how to take people down. How does that work with the COVID stuff? Are you allowed to like touch people, or it's like I can't touch you, but you need to lay on the ground?
No,
You're
we
all masked
did.
up and your mask is falling off when you're getting these guys. I mean, come on, man.
Yeah, I mean, we were testing every week, socially
Okay,
distancing when we weren't doing, the arrest and control tactics portion.
combatives and
Yeah, the
stuff.
combatives, that was still pretty normal. But yeah,
Excuse
when
me,
we
sir.
weren't,
Stay 6 feet
yeah,
away from me, but please lay down and pretend
yeah,
like I am pinning you to the floor.
yeah. So no, that was definitely a challenge.
Okay.
And but yeah, I have no problem starting over and doing this. And but what I found now is that I kind of got into this weird area where I don't have a problem starting over. Um, but it's it's a challenge because I think age probably has something to do with it now. Regardless of what people say, oh well, we don't discriminate against people, but and I took one of the things that I did. I started talking with one of the veterans assistance programs with Department of Workforce Services here in Utah. Is he was like, he was a veteran. He's like, hey, take the dates off of your resumes. Take the dates off of everything. So, people can't see that because I have a bachelor's degree and a master's degree. Fortunately, that was all finished like towards the end of my military career, like towards the very end. So I got my bachelor's degree in 2020.
So you're doing all
That's
this school while you're doing all. Wow, dude, that's
yeah,
impressive.
yeah. I
That is
finished
impressive.
I finished my bachelor's degree in the Army, and then a year of master's degree, and then my first year as a federal officer, I was on grave shift, and grave shift was actually pretty boring, and so I was able to finish up my second year of my master's degree there.
Awesome.
So I was doing
So
everything I can to improve.
with the
That's
age thing,
awesome.
I imagine comes challenges, right? Especially in the line of business you chose to go into. With that being said, I gotta imagine that I think where you're maybe you won't say this, but I'll say it for you, is promotions and stuff like that. You probably get overlooked a lot more because they're going for these younger kids and people that got a little bit longer career, right? They don't want to put you in probably uh, a position of like leadership because they're like, oh well, how many more years do we got out of him? You know what I mean? And so I imagine that there's
Absolutely.
a little bit of a challenge there with that.
In federal law enforcement, I didn't see that. I got promoted pretty quickly
Oh,
twice.
okay.
I went from officer to sergeant to
Damn.
lieutenant
Okay, well,
to
good.
lieutenant.
That's good. At least maybe they had seen something in you and your leadership and stuff. So
But on the other hand, now that I'm out of federal service completely, yeah, I think that there's absolutely something to that. In that some of these corporations that are because operations management is really the one thing that I can do. Is like the most transferable skill from military to civilian, particularly, I mean, it was terrifying getting out of the military. And then that's why I think I went
after
to
28
something.
years of
Yeah.
consistency and you knew what was going to go on during those 28 years, I imagine you were like, whoa, what
Yeah.
do I do
And
now?
absolutely. And I think that's why I sought out, something a little bit more regimented. But now that I'm, completely out of federal service, I think that it's definitely more challenging, 100% more challenging, because a lot of, just like you were saying, a lot of these organizations, if they're going to hire an operations manager or a, vice president of operations, they're going to want someone who's going to have, a lifespan there. And, you know, I'm 51. So, yeah, I have a lot of good years left in me, but some corporations, companies, they want to get more than 9 years out of somebody, maybe. And so, it was beginning in early this year. It's been a lot of challenges dealing with the resume process, the job hunting, the interviews. I had one organization where I did 6 interviews with the same organization. Um, and I said, yeah, we're going to go another route.
You've gotten
I
Uh,
accustomed to eating humble pie a little bit.
I
yeah.
I have a question for you because
Mhm,
I met you at the Veteran Business Resource Center.
mhm.
Have they been a part of helping you during this project, or did you get involved with them when you started the nonprofit? Because I know what they do is they actually help people in their businesses. They'll help with the resume building, they'll help with all of this stuff. Were you utilizing them for that, or just since you're a nonprofit?
No, with them since the nonprofit, I had been going over. So, in a town not far from here is the Utah Department of Workforce Services, and they have a specific veterans coordinator, I think is his title. And he is the one that I've been, going in with, sitting down, like, hey, what, because I got a security clearance, I got degrees, I have all this stuff. Why am I having these problems? And that was through workforce services.
I
But
I know there's a VSO there that my husband goes to.
mhm,
And so I know exactly what you're talking about. It's a really good place that
yeah,
that is there. Can you tell a little bit more about what this coordinator has been helping you with?
sure. So resume review, and then he's going to set up like mock interviews and things like that, and then they can work on doing recommendations for to businesses, saying basically you've been vetted essentially um, by them. Um, but having to deal with months of job applications and things like that, it's really not. I think it's kind of not the direction I want to go, which is why I decided, hey, let's do something really positive with this. Let's form a nonprofit. Let's and my nonprofit is to promote physical and mental well-being,
What is
and sense of community. Mhm.
what is it called, and kind of talk about your journey with that
Sure.
and what you guys are doing.
Sure. So the name of the nonprofit is Wasatch Defenders Outdoors. It's a nonprofit 501c3 outdoor educational organization dedicated to our Primary demographic is veterans, military, active duty, guard, reserve, and first responders. And it's building a sense of community, mental well-being, and physical well-being uh, through outdoor activities, specifically climbing and snow sports. I've been climbing for many years. Now I have, civilian certifications through the American Mountain Guide Association. Um, skiing, I have, avalanche education certifications, out wilderness first aid, that kind of thing. So I and it really, I was always really kind of a recreational climber for years and years and years since the early 90s. But I was actually assigned to the Army's. I was the first sergeant for the Army's Northern Warfare Training Center in Alaska, and we focused on cold weather and mountain operations. And so that's really what kind of, wow, I really want to do this. And so I started, in earnest, climbing and
Wow.
skiing and everything else in, probably 2013, give or take. And been doing that ever since. And for me personally, and I know for a lot of people that I take out, and that my board members and I, when we go out on climbing trips and such, um, for me it's very therapeutic.
Mhm.
Getting on the rock,
Grounded.
getting up on a snowy slope, literally all the stuff in your mind, all the hardships of the day or the month or the decade or your life, it kind of goes away because you just become so focused
Focus.
on finding a hold, or climbing on the rock, or skiing down a steep slope. It's been very therapeutic, and I always walk away from these kind of experiences feeling so much better and more centered and grounded, and all the clutter in the mind has just kind of gone away. That's why I was mentioning your poem that you read earlier. Now all that stuff in your mind just kind of goes away, even if it's for a couple hours when you're outside. um, it kind of dissipates, and
It's
you.
good. It's good to give your mind that break, right? Like
Mhm.
sometimes when it's on overload and doing this too much, it's kind of nice to go get that grounded and remove that static and stuff like that. And like you said, now you have a whole nother focus. You don't want to miss this. You don't want to miss a spot. You don't want to slip and fall. So I imagine that that you become very hyper focused about what's in
Very
front of
much.
you and not what's all around you at the moment.
Very much. And then the community, getting 6 or 7 people together from, whether it's a veteran, and I think one of the most overlooked kind of groups is your ambulance people, your
Yeah.
EMS,
Oh,
your
absolutely.
firefighters.
First
Oh, you're
responders,
you're
all the
you're
first responders.
Yep.
Yes.
Because
They see day to day
yeah,
bad
every
stuff.
single day they see people on their worst day, with missing all kinds of stuff, and that's their job. And then they have to go home and decompress. They don't have, you get back
sorry.
from a, no, no, you're fine. You get back from in the military, you get back from a 3 month, a 6 month, a 9 month deployment, whatever. You have this reintegration process, but
Well,
your
Mike,
EMS,
that's why I was just going to ask. Are you so this is not just a veteran nonprofit. This is for all the first responders.
first
Love it.
responders,
Yes.
Awesome.
yep. And but they have to decompress, and they get home and do 12 or 48 hours, whatever they have off, and then with their family, and now they're right back into it again, being exposed to all that stuff.
For
And
hours.
so that's what I kind of want to get after with this, and be able
Mm.
to provide that decompression to people, and be able to the mental solitude that I find, 300 feet up the side of a mountain. I want to be able to provide that for other people, even if it's on a much smaller scale, even if it's just, like single pitch, like 50, 60, 70 feet of climbing at a park. You can still get after that solitude and the connection to nature, to just declutter what's going on in your brain. And that's what I want to be able to provide for people.
So, a couple thoughts that I had, and first one, if people don't know, Utah is one of the most beautiful places to go to the mountains because you can go. You don't even have to leave town, but you
No.
just get up just slightly to the side of the mountain, and you see the entire valley, and it is phenomenal. Like for me, I can't do a lot of like extreme hiking, but I find these like little mini hikes, and I go up,
Hmm.
and you can see the whole valley and just shut off. And so I can imagine that what you're doing, bringing people into the higher parts, like how phenomenal is that? And the kind of a couple of questions that I have with this is I know that last time I spoke with you when I first met you, you said that you are still in like the very baby steps
Yeah.
with this. Okay, so I want to know, this has been a couple months since I've seen you, how have things progressed? Have you gotten the funding? Are people starting to schedule with you? And or do you have, well, and do you have plans to partner with the Wounded Warrior Project or the National Ability Center that's here to just do partnerships?
Oh, great question. Um, so unfortunately, the shutdown put a pretty significant damper on us. So uh, Salt Lake, just like you said, Marie, it provides all these really easily accessible opportunities within it. From downtown Salt Lake, you drive 10, 15, 20 minutes, and you're exposed to some of these beautiful areas.
That's my favorite hike because I can't go very far, and so I
Mhm.
just go up. It's just north of the capital, or either north
Mhm.
or what, west, east,
Like Ensign
north,
Peak.
north, yes. And so you literally like behind there's all of the houses, and
Mhm.
you go up this hill, right? And you just see the entire valley, you see the capital right
Yep.
there, and there's just these hikes that's just phenomenal. And
Yep.
I like that because I can
Ensign
go in my
Peak.
braces. Yes. I can take my braces, I can take my cane and just do a short little hike and just
Mhm.
feel amazing. So anyways, go ahead.
No, absolutely. And that's what's wonderful about the area. Um, the problem is, from our standpoint, is all of the areas, the majority of areas that are climbable are in Big Cottonwood Canyon and Little Cottonwood
Mhm.
Canyon, and up further north in Ogden too, and it's all
Yep.
Forest Service.
Now Ogden is
Um,
close to where I am. It's about a half an hour
mhm.
north of where I am.
Yep,
Yep.
and about 20 minutes north of where I am, so because I'm in Layton. Um,
Okay, I'm Kaysville. So there we go.
oh yeah, we're very close, next door.
Yep.
It's all Forest Service land. It's all federally owned, and so the permitting process has essentially been put on hold um, because of the shutdown. And then from the other standpoint, we filed with the IRS in September, and the nonprofit. From what I understand, my research, the nonprofit. So our attorneys are telling us, yes, as soon as you're filed, you can operate as a nonprofit. That's awesome. We haven't got the approval yet, but everything is retroactive, so we're good, completely good to be a nonprofit now. Um, but the shutdown has just taken an already long wait and made it longer. They say, I think between 6 to 12 months was the overall time, the horizon for a nonprofit approval. And so they added about another 6 weeks onto that already 6 to 12 month, wait. Um, the good thing is we're filed, so it'll happen when it happens. But yeah, so that's been a challenge. And then as far as funding, we did receive our first sponsor, First Utah Bank.
Oh,
So and they contributed, so that's huge. But we're always looking for more support. Permitting process, that'll happen. Now that the government's back open, at least I'm pretty sure it's back open.
it is.
Yeah.
At least
Um,
partially, I think.
yeah. So our permitting process for the Cottonwoods, which is where I do the vast majority of my climbing, it's on a lottery. So hopefully the lottery works out in our favor, and it's every January you apply, and then by the end of the month they'll tell you whether or not you get your year's permit based on usage, and I'm sure there's other factors. But and then there's the Ogden area that we're also going to apply for, and that's not on a lottery. That's essentially, from what I understand, for uh, outdoor educational use, which absolutely fits with what we want to do. So we have several options. And as soon as we get the permitting, we're going to start conducting operations. So, yeah.
So before I forget, Brian, I can't send you a message. I was trying to send you his email address for you to post on here. Rob, can you just tell us what your email address, and Brian can put it down underneath
I,
so
I,
that,
I think I think it's in the message. So I'll go ahead and
okay, but that way people can contact you if they're interested. Or what is your website?
so
Sure.
yeah, okay, go ahead.
Our website is www.all one word wasatchdefendersoutdoors.org.
Okay.
And all the board members have access to the email is admin_WDO at wasatchdefendersoutdoors.org.
Okay. Awesome.
Okay. Question. I got a couple questions, and
Mhm.
I'll put you on a little bit of the pressure cooker here.
Sure.
And so is it? I'll ask you a couple of them real quick, and then you can kind of answer them. Is it open to all experiences? And is it anybody from who wants to go do it but never has, a little scared? Do you guys have that opportunity? And is it open to anybody that maybe have any kind of disabilities, or do you guys kind of stay away from that as well? Because or do you guys have opportunities? Maybe there's a climb that someone with a little bit of some disabilities can do. And also, if someone wanted to be a part of this or wanted to do it, how do they start the process?
Oh, thanks, Brian. No, great questions. Um, so it's we actually encourage our one of our primary focuses is the intro to climbing. Someone who's never had an outdoor experience or only done an indoor climbing gym type thing. That's kind of our focus because um, the building a sense of community. There's a lot of people in the military who may have done some rappelling, maybe some law enforcement who did a little bit of rappelling, something like that. But overall, you don't really see a whole lot of um, people outside of maybe some search and rescue entities that have a whole lot of exposure to high angle terrain. So that's essentially our focus is these intro to climbing and doing it in a very safe environment. What we refer to in the climbing world is doing top roping. So you are, very introductory terrain, nothing too crazy. And we set up top ropes so that the individuals, if they were to fall on their climb, they're really not going to go anywhere because there's someone belaying them at all times. So it's a
Awesome.
very, very safe environment, and that's our primary focus. And to get to the people who've never had these experiences that would like to go and hang out with, number one, hang out with people that are, have some crazy experiences like them, and number two, to try something new that they haven't done. And what I've found is that everyone I've ever taken out, they really, really, really want to continue doing what they're doing, and they really enjoy it, because we absolutely believe in providing. You can do the admin underscore WDO at Wasatch for email.
Okay.
That would be the best one, actually.
All right.
Um,
Real quick
mhm,
question. So for me, I have this brace. I have these fancy new knee braces that actually have like an ankle, and it
mhm.
goes underneath my feet. There's a metal plate. Now, is for somebody who have to wear braces, is this something that could, like, not just for me, because I know there's a lot of other people,
Mhm.
or somebody with a fake limb or something. Is this something that they could potentially do with that top, with those people, like kind of helping pull up? Is that something that we could still do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I
Awesome.
actually I volunteer with Ogden Valley Adaptive as well for their climbing program.
Oh, nice.
And they have a really, really cool program. Eventually, I was talking with some of their seniors, and I think that one of the directions we'd like to do is maybe get them outside as well. But most of their stuff right now is indoors. Ogden Valley Adaptive has a great adaptive climbing program, though,
Oh, nice.
um, and it's so cool to volunteer and to help out OVA with their program. And they operate in two different areas for their climbing piece. Is one is at Weber State University at their climbing wall, and then the other is the front in Ogden. Gives their climbing area to OVA for a couple hours every week. Um, and being able to see people with challenges and get out and get up walls. They even have it at Weber State. They have an adaptive setup where someone paralyzed from the waist down can actually get into um, a a climbing apparatus, and they can pull themselves up with their upper body.
Nice. Is it like one of those ones
It's
where they pull it up and it kind of stops and then they?
Yep, that's
Oh, nice.
exactly what
That's
it is. Yep.
outstanding. Cool.
So there's definitely opportunities, and we can absolutely, work with individuals. I was talking with my driver from the 10 and 11 deployment to Afghanistan. I was talking with him very recently, a couple weeks ago, and he is missing his right leg from the mid shin down. And I was telling him, hey man, if you get out to Utah, I'll get you up there one way or another. We'll make it work. We can even, figure out, we can adapt, and provide very safe opportunities for someone. I would say, depending on the type of prosthetic you have, it might even be beneficial on the lower limbs, or even, an arm. If you get a little hook, you can get into a tiny little crack a lot better than, my sausage fingers. So, there's all kinds of ways to deal with every situation, maybe a little bit differently, but absolutely we can facilitate that for sure.
So, Rob and I briefly, this was like very briefly, but discussed a possible partnership of me coming in and being a speaker for some of his classes. And so, what kind of were your thoughts on that?
Oh, absolutely. Um, you know, Hands down, I think that different perspective, and different experiences will build to a better positive outcome for everybody, for
So,
sure.
you're wanting to kind of incorporate like, hey, this is physical resiliency. Let's also add in the
Hmm.
emotional resiliency
Yes.
onto it. I think that'll be so fun, so
And a
exciting.
sense of community too. Sense of
Yes,
community is huge. Yeah.
yeah,
Getting
and
around
I'm
like people with like experiences, with similar experiences.
I'm
It
excited
sounds like
for the
it's going to be a
potential.
very
Yeah, I was just going to say I'm excited for the future possibility, and especially because one of the main things that I do here in the local area is networking and recovery advocacy, and so I
Mm.
think it's going to be a beautiful, beautiful ability for me to share some of the resources I have with you and with the people that you're going to have coming on, and I'm super excited to kind of like see where you're going with all of this. It's going to be so fun.
it sounds like it's definitely a great opportunity to heal, right? In a lot of ways. Working with each other. Something that a lot of us veterans, we do is we go on humps, we go on these long hikes out in the wilderness, and a lot of times we don't ever really get to appreciate the wilderness so much
For
because we're
sure.
we're we're in the suck, you know what I mean? So this is a great opportunity to really connect with nature, a sense of camaraderie, and just a way of grounding yourself as well. So I mean, it sounds like there's just so much that you guys are. I imagine, just like anything else, you kind of go in there with this vision, and then the vision grows. And I imagine it's already
Definitely.
growing.
Definitely. One of the things I want to do is I want to eventually get to the point where, we're doing a little bit more expeditions than just our little local day trips, doing something a little
Yeah,
bit more
cool
ambitious.
trips. Yeah,
Open open an indoor climbing place where, you know, yeah, you can climb, but you can also just hang out and shoot the shit with anybody, who has an experience like you. I think that's huge. And then, yeah, that's kind of the long term. But and you're absolutely right though. I got to go down to Bridgeport, California, where the
ooh,
Marine
yeah,
Corps does their mountain
yeah.
warfare school.
That's the suck there for
Yeah,
cold
I
weather
went down there,
training.
and yep, and you're absolutely right. Like the Eastern Sierras are some of the most beautiful areas in the United States, and the dudes and dudettes that I saw out there in the Eastern Sierras were not appreciating any of
Oh,
it
no.
at all. Like it was a very memorable experience, but I think that you could kind of classify it as like type 2 fun.
Embrace the
Not
suck, man.
Yeah, it's not fun while you're doing it.
Uh,
But yeah, I want to show people that, yeah, you can have really awesome experiences like Bridgeport, but without any of the suck, and you can.
So I've got one more layer to ask
Mhm,
about and whatnot. So you're correct me if I was wrong, but your wife was there with you when I
mhm,
met you, correct?
yep.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I know that she is involved. Can you kind of we don't have to go into too many details, but
Mhm.
I wanted to know, has she been with you this entire military career into the transition here? Kind of what's your journey been with her? Do you have children, and how has your wife been involved with this Wasatch Defender Outdoors? Like, I just kind of wanted to hear a little bit about your family life aspect with it all
Sure.
and how she's involved.
No,
'Cause
absolutely.
she seemed
Support
really
groups are
wonderful.
important. Yeah.
Yeah.
Our,
So
our,
yes,
our, our spouses are one of our biggest support or
yes.
non-supporters we
Absolutely.
have.
And she was so wonderful when I met her. And so yeah, I just kind of wanted to know, you don't have to go into all your details with it, but
No, no.
how has she been involved with all of this?
So she and I were married in 2018. Um, and it's directly because of the military. And in a horrible event, and I think that our marriage is probably one of the only good thing that I know of, that I'm aware of, that came out of that situation. So 10 years to 15 years ago now, 2010, November 2010, when I lost those 6 guys.
Yes, I remember
Um,
you told me a little bit about this. Sorry. Yes, I knew there was a reason I was bringing it up. So there we go.
so my wife's daughter, so she has 2 daughters and a son. I have 2 daughters from previous marriage. Um, her oldest daughter was married to one of my guys that was killed in Afghanistan. Um,
Yeah.
I maintained, I wasn't some kind of, creeper that was like, oh, there's some, you know,
Opportunity.
opportunity. No. So I stayed in touch with all of the families, for
Yeah.
many years afterward. And somehow, I think it was about 2015 or so, they were killed in 2010. 2015, I think either she requested me through all the mutual friends or whatever that we had on Facebook, and eventually, about late 2016, early 2017, we started. Yeah, it was 2017. We started dating, and then we were married about 18 months later in 2018. She's been extremely supportive. She's born and raised in LA. I am from Maine, so literally about as much opposite as you can possibly hope for. She'd never done climbing or skiing. When we were in Kentucky, my final assignment in the army, she started climbing, she started skiing. We moved out here. Now she climbs and skis all the time. She's a huge fan. She's really good. And she is the secretary now. So we have 4 board members total. Myself, and Vanessa Clark is our vice president. Bill Burns is our treasurer, and my wife is the secretary. So that's our team. And she is supporting every event that we've done so far, mostly team training, getting all of our people, on the same sheet of music and how we want to do this here when we start getting the permit process taken care of. So yeah, she's been super supportive. She loves to climb, she loves to ski, and she's a part of the team. She's on the board.
Love it.
That's
So
wonderful.
we'll start wrapping it up a little bit. I just want to know though, like, what is your big vision, for yourself and for the next 5 to 10 years? What do you hope or what do you foresee?
I want to be able to impact as many, kind of that selfless service stuff that that we were discussing earlier. I've always been, you know in the mind of being able to make the world a better place, and be able to provide positive outlets, um positive outlets to our demographic, and not just our demographic, like our WDO, Wasatch Offenders Outdoors. We don't say, oh, well, you don't have any military experience. You don't have any, you're not a first responder. We're just not helping you. We will. But is to provide the military, the veteran, and the first responder community with a positive outlet, whether it be, people here in the greater Salt Lake Valley area, or people that just come in from without, from around the lower 48. They come out to ski in the area, for a week, and we take them out ice climbing, or something like that, to make as much impact as possible, and do provide the best opportunities that we can for people to get out, because I truly believe that there's such a positive aspect to, community, and then getting out and kind of decluttering the mind through the medium of rock and ice and snow.
That
Now,
is
do you envision
wonderful.
yourself making chapters out of this, or do you guys see yourself expanding from just where you're at
Oh
to
yeah,
maybe
different
growing
country,
it,
different states.
or do you want to keep it kind of, don't want it to get too crazy?
So one of the things we're talking about, we're going to have our annual board meeting here in the next month or so. One of the things that we're going to do is discuss whether or not we want to expand our board. I think we're going to. And with that, we really want to start pushing some support from, legal, marketing, that kind of thing, so that we can have that marketing, particularly so that we can um, start expanding out near term. I don't see any significant expansion. I just want to get this thing rolling and get people out and providing awesome opportunities. But like I said, I would like to, get a climbing gym in the Layton area eventually, and maybe do it, or some expeditions into a little bit more interesting places, from a mountaineering standpoint, maybe, into the Wind River Range in Wyoming, or the Cascades, um, Colorado, etc. But just doing trips there. Would we like to expand? Absolutely. Opening chapters, and I've thought about this before. We're Wasatch Defender Outdoors. We could start a satellite, Cascades Defenders Outdoors, SoCal Defenders Outdoors. I would absolutely think that that would be something that we could do, but it's going to need, support, obviously.
Right. And you always, one thing I've noticed when it comes to nonprofits, right? When picking a team and doing all that stuff, you got to find people who have just as much passion
Yep,
as you
for
do
sure.
for the mission, right?
100%.
Because it's you're not getting paid really to go do this.
Yep.
It's on your own time. So it's, you got to find those individuals out there that have that same passion as you do, or if not, it like get them as close to that as possible. And I imagine expanding, right? You don't want to put your name on something, expand it, and then them go destroy what you've worked so hard to do because they didn't have the exact same vision as you did.
No,
So,
absolutely. Very much.
so if people want to get involved with donations, is that something that you guys are open to, like partnerships and stuff
On
like
the
that?
website?
No, absolutely. And we do have a donation link in our
Awesome.
website.
Perfect.
On the website itself, you can click on donate, and you can do a one-time donation, or you can do a, monthly and annual. We haven't really seen anything yet, so maybe hopefully in the next 6 to 12 months we'll start seeing a lot more traction. Now we have First Utah, and they're definitely going to help us out with the, from that aspect, but we need as much support as we can possibly get, so we can provide a really awesome opportunity to, there's a lot of people in the areas. The Salt Lake itself population isn't huge, compared to Los Angeles or San Diego or New York City. But when you look at the aggregate of the population of Salt Lake Valley, from, North Ogden down to Provo, Lehigh, you're talking a lot of people, and it's only getting bigger, and there's more people coming in. There's a lot of people out there that could really benefit from these services, and we just want to be able to provide some really awesome, positive outlet for people who may have a lot of significant trauma in their past.
I love that you keep saying positive outlet because there's so much negativity in the
Ah,
world that
yep.
the more positive things that we can bring, the better, and I encourage it. And thank you so much, Rob, for continuous to be selfless, man. I know a lot of CEOs of nonprofits, and I know how much work and dedication they put into it because they're so passionate and they want to save lives and things like that. So, man, I appreciate you have thoroughly defined the role of being a leader
Yes.
in so many manners, man. And you are a prime example for me what a leader looks like. And I thank you for sharing all of that with us, man, and opening up your mind to us, because we don't get to hear the words from leaders that much, you know, and a lot of them, they're just tough as nails. And I know that there is a part of them that they just don't share, but I love it when they do, because there's so much we can learn from you guys, and how you were able to get to a place that not many people can reach. I mean, a sergeant major of the military is a very hard rank to reach. I don't think people understand that.
So I have one last question for you. Okay,
Oh,
kind of based on that. I have asked some higher ranking individuals who are retired or who, got out. I have asked them to come be on the show, and I have had a few responses of people saying, "No, we don't talk. We don't talk about what we've been through. This is inappropriate. People shouldn't be telling their story like this. Or like there's been people that are worried about, oh, well, what if people that you worked with find out about your story and this, that, and the other. I guess, what is one thing that you would say or encourage to people who feel so shut down, and they're like, they don't either feel like their story is okay to share, they don't feel like they're worth their voice being out, or they have been so drilled to, you just move on without talking. What's something that you can encourage for the people who are refusing to share their story? Now, that's their autonomy, but just what's a piece of advice or a thought process that you have regards to that? Because you came on here so willingly, so very open to talk about everything. So what's your advice to people who are still shut down like that?
I would say we got to break out of that old school mindset. Um, that, hey, don't talk. But I think that's, and for a lot of people who are retired, that means you probably came in pre 9/11. And, there's still that old school mentality of,
the stigma.
oh, if I go to mental health and I get diagnosed with PTSD and I talk to a counselor, I'm going to lose my security clearance. I just don't talk about that kind of thing. I can't show weakness. You look at some of these, there's a lot of people out there. You got some dudes from some really high end organizations. You got there's one guy. I won't go into a whole lot. He does podcasts. Dude was in Delta in CAG. Whatever you want to call it. And he is very open about sharing his experiences, particularly on the mental health side. And I think that that's huge. And we just got to get past, because if someone sees an assaulter, a guy that did, you know, 20 plus years in like one of the most non-talked about organizations, so little information comes out from that part of Fort Bragg, but this dude's on there talking about, his experiences with trauma and things like that. If he can do it, anybody can do it. And I and, he's doing it on podcasts and things. I think we just got to get past that. We realize, for me personally, I realize that the majority of people, even not in a combat arms or combat support role, can be exposed to trauma from a deployment. Some people can be exposed to trauma without even going on a deployment.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And being able to share your experiences will make you more relatable, and it will show other people. We keep hearing about this 22 a day, whatever. If more people are able to come forward and share, like, I had PTSD, um, that, hey, it's not just you. You're not the only one going through this. I think that's a huge way, which is part of why I stress the community aspect of, Wasatch Defenders, is that other people are going to realize that, hey, it's not just me. And they're going to start breaking down, and honestly, talking about it is the best. I was talking with, one of my guys recently, and he had a lot of significant PTSD trauma. And he said that one of the things that really helped him, and it was one of the mental resources that they provided through the VA was, I don't remember the name of the intervention, the treatment, but it was talking about it over and over and over and over
Exposure
again.
therapy.
And he did that,
Exposure
and he
therapy.
said it,
Yep.
and he said it has helped a lot. And I think that that's a huge thing, being able to
And he
talk about
talked
it,
about it. Yep.
Yep. And being exposed to it. And yeah, I think that, I think that climbing, skiing, and it has its own little part. And it may be a
So
very little part, but it'll help.
let me ask you guys a question. Who on here has PTSD? All right. So there you go. 3 out of 3. I think that, it's okay for people to say they have PTSD. It shouldn't be such a stigma thing to talk about it as well. So I think you brought up some really good points, Rob. I really do appreciate you, man. More than you can ever know. Appreciate your service to our country. 28 years is a hell of a commitment to make. And I appreciate you still wanting to go do stuff for the community, man. Thank you so much.
Oh,
So
thank you, Bryan. Thank you, Marie. I
you are
appreciate it.
You are the perfect example because, our little tagline that I'm working on, right, is healing out loud, PTSD to advocacy. And that is what you are doing. And it is so wonderful. Yes, like Bryan said, to hear your story, to be here. And then as well, I love that you touched base on that idea that you can have PTSD even if you didn't deploy, because there are so many people, and we've talked about this many times, so many people that feel like, well, my stuff is not worthy. And it's like,
ashamed. They're ashamed that they have PTSD, but they didn't deploy.
Yes.
It's like,
but
there's no shame.
PTSD is just a trauma response. And so just thank you so much for being vulnerable and willing to be here and opening yourself up to the world. I'm so grateful to be able to witness what you have going, and it'll be a little bit of a part of it if you will continue to let me. And just thank you so much for being here with us.
Absolutely. I really appreciate, I think just our little conversation has been even really super beneficial, from a, just a talk standpoint, just
Absolutely.
being able to share. So I really appreciate both of you for having me on.
Thank you once again. All right, Rob. Well, we're going to go ahead and let you go, man. And we once again thank you so much for being our first guest for season 4, man.
That's
thank you, and
perfect.
have amazing.
Perfect.
I'm sure we'll be in touch, man. And please add us on all the things social media wise, and feel free to post what you got going on, especially in the Every Days of Saturday community group. It's a good place to share, and there's a lot of like-minded folks in there as well that could reap some benefits from it. So please share away, man. Thank you once again.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Wow. All right.
Yeah.
That was a great way to start season 4.
Super powerful.
I love the opportunity to talk to a leader and to someone who spent 28 years. And what is awesome about him is the relevancy of he literally served, during the peacetime in the 90s all the way up to pretty current, right? I mean, just got out 4 years ago. So his experiences are still relevant to what's really probably going on today. So it was really great to get a perspective from that high of a ranking member, and for him to share his leadership and the way that he led and the things that he's experienced. I couldn't be more, like, I don't know. This was a great episode for me.
Well, and what's perfect is he is bridging the gap with so many generations, and I love that.
True.
Because
very true.
He came in the 90s when you still have some of the people who've been around from
Storms and other conflicts.
So from all of this stuff, he went through during your time, during my time, and during all of this modern time. And so he is bridging the gaps from all of this, and he has touched on every single level. And so it's just beautiful to see that he can connect so many generations.
And you talk about having to deal with change, right? Imagine amount of changes that he's seen in the 28 years during his time.
9/11, COVID, those just to top it, and on top of everything else that's been going on. Yeah, that's
100%.
huge.
Yeah. So what a banger for season 4 start off. We once again thank you all so much for following us. Please continue to share this out. We're not in it for the clicks and all that stuff, but we are in it to get these stories out and to normalize healing out loud, right? And to feel that it's okay to tell your stories. That's why we're bringing on everybody. As you can see, we have a high-ranking enlisted member come in and talk about things that I think a lot of people are afraid to share. And we're just getting to that level. We want to normalize it because we do got to start chipping away on this number, right? This number of men and women still giving numbers to the war. We got all these men and women who we won the war overseas, but they lose their battle here at home. And that's a horrible thing because we're still giving numbers to the enemies when we do that.
Yes.
And so however we can stop this or combat it or get in front of it. I know, no matter how much everybody tries, you only could do so much, but we're going to do our damnedest to get it out there and normalize the healing out loud. And once again, thank you, Marie, for taking us down this journey and, bringing the idea about healing out loud. It's been a great journey, and we're excited for season 4.
Thank you so much. Yeah, this is wonderful. Thank you. I'm excited to see what happens. I
got to say, we probably got about 30 people damn near lined up for.
We got a lot,
guys. So, I mean, by the time this airs, we'll probably be halfway done with the season.
Well, and then I'm planning on starting those in person, on the spot location shoots over at Cash Coffee. I'm planning on doing a few of those, so we'll have much more coming up. So I'm excited to see what happens.
I don't want to make any promises here, but a vision that I do have is I would love for us to come up with a way where we can raise funds. And when we raise funds, I would like to publicly say our first set of funds would go to Rob and his nonprofit. So hopefully there's a way we could come up maybe with some, shirts or something some way or another to get some funds, and all the funds and proceeds would go directly to a nonprofit, which, I would love to help Wasatch. Is that Wasatch? Yeah, there
Wasatch.
Wasatch.
You gotta get a little country. Wasatch.
Yeah, I would love to help him and get them going. I know that doing nonprofits and stuff like that, one of the biggest things the hardest part is getting the funds just to get that thing moving. And I imagine they want to have equipment and stuff like that. So if people show up and they don't have equipment, they have stuff set aside. So it takes funds to do such a thing. And what better way to help someone who's out there helping others? Hey, maybe you guys go and you buy coffee and you probably spend $10 at Starbucks. Why not? And give $10 to a nonprofit or someone where that money will actually go towards helping others. So I don't know. We'll come up with some way or another, Marie, that we can start earning some funds and getting some donations, and all of it would go exactly right off to a nonprofit. And like I said, I would start off with Wasatch Defenders Outdoors and help Rob with his venture.
That sounds wonderful. Awesome.
All right, guys. Well, we're going to go ahead and call it. And once again, if you guys would like to be a part of the show, please reach out to Marie. There's an email right there, Marie@sliderbabe.com, or just go over, check out her sliderbabe.com. And there's a place there that you can do the scheduling as well. And don't forget, she also has a Facebook group that she's trying to build a community over there as well, and trying to bring out other ways to heal. So go check that out as well.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And God bless, and thank you guys so much. And you know how we say, don't let the day kick your ass. Make sure you're out there kicking it, and we'll see you guys.
Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.